Ever since Avatar: The Last Airbender has popped up on Netflix, reigniting its dedicated fan base and gaining a whole new audience, an age-old question has popped up. Who's the better Avatar, Aang or Korra? And now with Legend of Korra making its debut on Netflix, a lot more fans are going to be able to participate in this conversation. So let's go through all the main stuff between Aang and Korra that ultimately decides who's the better Avatar. What's up guys, my name is Phoenix, this is the Anime Tea, and today we're going to be talking about Avatar and The Legend of Korra and going through a whole list of all the good and bad things from both of the shows as well as the individual characters. So let's get right on into it. Today I am drinking water. I'm usually drinking water because I'm thirsty and it's too hot to make hot tea. So in ATLA, we followed the story of Aang, the last of the Airbender tribe who was reawakened by a waterbender, Katara, and her brother Sokka, after 100 years of being trapped in an iceberg. The trio set out on a mission across the world to save Aang, learn all 4 elements along the way, and have to battle the Fire Nation who wants nothing but world domination. What starts as a lighthearted adventure turns into a more philosophical approach to inner and outer peace, all presented in a fun, anime-esque package that is loved nationwide. So Legend of Korra follows the new Avatar, Korra, the spunky, tough, and talented predecessor of Aang, who has already mastered most of the elements at a young age. We see her move to Republic City as a teenager, which is a hub created by Avatar Aang where people of all nations can live together. She goes there to study airbending, the final element she needs to master from the son of Aang himself, Tenzin, and his children who are the last remaining airbenders. From there, Korra meets her Avatar gang, her group, her posse, and encounters a slew of formidable adversaries and travels both in and out of the spirit world. So those are the 2 stories right there. Now we're going to dive really deep into the characters, and towards the end we're going to dive into the story and breaking that down. And we're going to talk about lives first. So Aang and Korra grew up during 2 different times, obviously. Aang doesn't exist in Korra's world because the Avatar only comes every 100 years. So the new Avatar can't exist without the old one passing away, so they don't get to meet in person, but they have spiritual connections and all that because, you know, they are all one, technically. Yeah, they grew up in 2 totally different time periods. Aang grew up, technically, when he grew up, he was a monk in a relatively peaceful time, almost similar to Korra's, which we're going to get into. But since he left the temple and ran away from his responsibilities as the Avatar, and, you know, 100 years later, was woken up in a totally different time period, he has to deal with all of those cultural and other differences that are brought up, and he finds out that the Fire Nation is waging war against the world, so he has to adjust to all that. Korra, on the other hand, since she lives in a time of relative peace, she actually gets to experience what most avatars experience. But most avatars, they grow up in their place of origin, and then they get trained there by like each of the masters of whichever bending that they need. So Korra gets all of that. She grows up in the Northern Water Tribe, I believe, and she gets trained in waterbending, firebending, and earthbending by several teachers from all over the world. But she has to go to Republic City to learn airbending because Tenzin, Aang's son, is one of the only airbenders left, and he's like the only airbending master. They send Korra to Republic City to learn airbending, which is where her story begins. So let's move on to personalities. So Aang is that dopey, adorable little kid. He's easily lovable. ATLA takes a lot from anime, and one main trope that they took was the dopey, adorable main character trope. It literally follows the trope of like every shonen show. Every shonen protagonist has this kind of identity where they're like kind of funny and derpy, but really, really powerful. Like think of Gon from Hunter x Hunter, Goku from Dragon Ball Z. That's a common thing that you see in here. So that's why I feel like a lot of people love Aang's character. Now with Korra, she's basically the contrast of Aang. She's a bit cocky, she's a little bit spoiled, she kind of has an attitude, she's a little bit full of herself because remember she grew up in a time where, you know, she's the Avatar, she came out literally firebending, airbending, and earthbending and waterbending all at the same time. So she was ready. She was ready from young. So it makes sense that she's a little cocky and full of herself, you know, she's really feeling herself. And I think a lot of people have problems with her character because people don't tend to like those characters. They like characters that are, you know, nice and honest and funny and, you know, can draw them in. And Korra doesn't do that. She doesn't really have that funny personality that we got with Aang. She's a totally different person. But I have to argue that even though she was really cocky towards the beginning, towards the end of that series, she really developed and grew into her own and began to understand that not everything was about her. I feel like people, when they automatically judge Korra because she has a lot of stigma against her, so it may seem like I'm really on Korra's side, but I'm just trying to make it a fair argument because a lot of people really dislike her. And actually, I want to bring up one main point. Korra's personality reminds me a lot of Bakugo from My Hero Academia, because we got to see through his backstory. When he was a kid, people hyped him up because he had a really strong quirk. So he was like, yeah, I'm cool, I'm full of myself, like, I'm gonna be the best, I'm number one, because people kept telling him that, oh, you're gonna be a really awesome hero, you have amazing powers, you know, they kept hyping him up. So he came out like that too. And a lot of people, like, including myself, didn't like Bakugo the first, you know, few episodes or first, like, even season. It wasn't until we got to see actual character growth in him that everyone started to love him. And that is what I think Korra goes through as well. She does get character growth and she does get humbled a lot. And we're going to talk about the times and the things that she's been through. But if you kind of compare and look at those two stories, even though they're two different characters from two different shows, they have similar upcomings. Both were told that they were great and they're going to be amazing, so they have to live up to those standards that other people have given them. And when they can't, they have an inferiority complex that builds up from all of that pressure. That's my main argument for Korra's character. If you're a Bakugo fan like I am, I love him to pieces, and you don't like Korra, I think you should reevaluate and really understand why you don't like Korra. Before we move on, go ahead and click that subscribe button and turn on notifications. New videos from the Anime Tea come out every Wednesday and Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Let's go right out into their powers, which is a huge part of the series, since Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra all deal with bending, elemental bending, so basically fire, earth, water, and air, and the avatars are the ones who can do all four, whereas there's other people throughout the world who can do one of each of those, and they're from different nations, and there's some people who don't have any bending powers at all. But let's start with Aang's powers and his mastery of the elements. Aang grew up in an air temple, and I think this is a common thing, but whatever area the avatar grows up in, they're usually they master it first, obviously. So Aang's a master airbender, and since he left before he could learn all the other bending techniques and styles, he mainly was only an airbender for a long time. Even in the first season of ATLA, he mainly focused and did airbending. He, along the way of like escaping from and running away from the Fire Nation, he has to learn all the elements so that he can eventually face the Fire Lord during Sozin's Comet. So his mastery of the elements is a little bit rushed. Not just a little bit, but like super rushed, because I think the timeline of ATLA is a year. So he has to learn all the elements within a year. And what he's able to do with that at the end of the show is incredible, from learning all that in a year while on the run, like literally learning bits and pieces from different teachers and different kind of styles and like different locations is incredible. Aang struggled a lot with learning each of the elements, especially earth, because it's literally air's opposite, and like usually more powerful moves. Even fire was a little bit difficult for him because he wasn't used to like having to have so much control over his bending. With air and with water, it's kind of just like a flow, like a movement. Air is like literally a part of you, so it's just like all around you at all times, so he could just control it or use it to his whim, like at any time. But with fire and earth bending, it was something else that was more separate from him, and he had to either create, like with fire bending, or he had to manipulate but be powerful about each of his movements, like with earth bending. But Korra, like I said, grew up in times of peace, so she had it all packed down with all the teachers. She had years of instructions to learn all the techniques, and she's already kind of like a really offensive like power user, so which makes sense why she's able to like learn each of the elements pretty quickly too. But with airbending, it's a little bit hard for her because she's really straight on, and airbending is more about being like passive and like using what's around you. Let's move on into fighting styles. So I'm not a fighting expert, like at all. Like I can't fight. I can't. Like I don't know martial arts. I know nothing. But here's what I think I can tell through Aang and Korra's characters and how they fight. Aang is very much a defensive fighter. Since he is a monk, he kind of embodies that throughout the series, and he doesn't like violence. He's a very peaceful person, so he tries to persuade, people who he's fighting either to not fight, or when he is fighting, he always just like blocks whatever move that comes towards him with air. He goes for the least amount of harm, the least amount of physical attacks as possible. Even in his last fight, his last major fight and finale of the season, when he's battling Fire Lord Aizen, even then he still opts for a peaceful resolution. And as we saw at the end of ATLA, he doesn't kill Aizen like everyone expected him to. He takes his bending away, which is the most peaceful route that he could have gone. Korra, on the other hand, seems like an offensive fighter. Everything she does has a ton of power packed behind it. Every move she makes is like a direct attack, and it's meant to take the person or her opponent out really fast. So when Korra fights Kuvira is kind of like the kind of opponent who already knows everything about Korra. She knows everything about the Avatar stage. She knows what all of her bending things can be. She knows her attack style. She knows a lot about her and her fighting style. She's really prepared to fight her. And Korra kind of just goes in there, and head first, she does everything. And she doesn't even really try to harm her, or she doesn't really go for a direct, harmful attack towards Korra. She really just lets Korra do her thing, and then takes her out or throws her to the ground to knock her off her high horse a little bit and knock off her self-esteem. At that point, she had already been through so much, and her past traumas were also affecting her fight with Kuvira, because it was just all coming back to her. She wasn't ready mentally to be in another fight. But let's talk about the threats that each of the characters had to face. During Aang's time, he had to face the Fire Nation and the Fire Lord, but his main thing was having to fight Lord Ozai at the end of season 3, the final season, during Sozin's Comet, and that was his biggest threat throughout the series. Any other threat throughout the series was related to the Fire Nation coming after him, essentially. But Korra, on the other hand, faced a ton of stuff. She faced her bending being taken away, which it was. She lost her memory. She lost her connection to all the other avatars. She essentially thought that she was going to be the last avatar. She was poisoned. She had to fight a tyrannical dictator who's trying to take over the world. Korra also had to overcome her PTSD, and not to mention a whole ton of teenage drama and mess, which we're going to get into in a second. But having to overcome all that throughout the series, throughout the 4 seasons that are given, I think the point was to try to make her a redeemable character, but she was towards the end. I believe that she was, because she went through so much and she got a whole new perspective on the world. I feel like it was a bit unnecessary for her to have to go through so much. I feel like she never got a real break during that whole series. Next, I want to talk about romances. So romance is a huge part of ATLA and Legend of Korra, so I feel like it's important to talk about them and how great and or terrible they may be. Starting with ATLA, with Aang. So despite what some people think, I knew, and a lot of people knew, that it was destined for Aang to end up with Katara, literally foreshadowed in the first episode. So not to disrespect the Zutara shippers, but y'all probably also ship Kachako, don't you? I bet you do. I'm not gonna set myself up for disappointment from the beginning, knowing that the characters that maybe get together are not gonna end up together, because you can tell from the interactions that the author purposely put in the show or the manga is going to go a certain way. Anyway, for ATLA, it was also nice that they followed a kind of linear path. We already kind of knew what characters they would end up with. But we did get robbed of Suki and Sokka's children, or mostly Sokka's children, I guess, because we don't know if Yasuke and Sokka ended up together like officially. We never really got to see confirmed children of them, and I feel like we were robbed because they probably would have been hilarious, and I'm upset. But we did get a whole lot of children in Legend of Korra. Legend of Korra is the relationships and how absolutely just... they were a mess. They were just a mess. It was just so messy. I was perfectly okay with mess, and I'm still okay with mess because I'm not gonna say I'm a messy person, but like I just like watching mess. I thought that their story was entertaining as heck, but it felt a little over the top. Like they did a lot. They did the most, and they didn't need to. Literally everyone in Korra's main group had a crush on or was in a relationship with one another. Bolin had a crush on Korra at the beginning, but then Korra had a crush on Mako. Then Mako liked Korra, but Mako had a girlfriend who was Asami, and then Asami and Mako broke up, and then Mako got with Korra, and then Mako and Korra dated for a long time, and then they broke up, but then Korra lost her memories, so she got back with him without realizing it, and then when she regained her memories, she was like, oh, we're not together, are we? And he was like, nah. And then and then they officially broke up, and then Asami and Mako went out again, and then they broke up again, and then at the very end, Korra and Asami got together. It's like, what? Why? And the only one who got really like gypped from this was Bolin. Bolin got no love throughout those seasons. He really didn't really get a girlfriend, and he deserved the most, honestly. Moving on into the overall stories. What made ATLA so successful was that it was simple. We knew from the beginning what was going to happen, and then we got that at the end, because the main thing that the story focused on was the journey from us meeting Aang to that final fight with Ozai. That whole journey was what made the anime great, not really... It's okay if the plot was really simple. Aang and Korra both deal with things in their own ways, but they are very detailed and well thought out characters with dealing with their own struggles, their own internal struggles, as well as the struggles of the world, the things that are put on them by other people, understanding their own life experiences and how that helps them fight their fights and win their battles and all of that stuff. Aang defeated a tyrant and connected the entire world, and Korra battled all of her individual personal traumas, as well as ultimately connected the living and spirit worlds together, which was something that hadn't been done since the first Avatar came into existence. So I believe Korra's impact was greater. She did a lot more for the series and for the Avatar world in general, doing something that they thought could never be done again, and she deserves that recognition. I don't care who says that Korra or the show is trash. It expanded the world of Avatar so much, and we got so much extra content from it that we wouldn't have been able to get if we had only had Aang's story. I know a lot of people hate the series, and I know it's because a lot of Annie-tubers are like literally scream from the top of their lungs how trash Korra is, but I hope that some of the things I said give it a chance to or give it some kind of chance to you to see that not everything is that bad. Lastly, the results. I feel like they each did their own thing for each of their series, and so for this video I'm gonna say that neither is better than the other, because this comparison thing is actually kind of dumb, and I think that I just wanted to bring up a lot of different things from the series and from the characters themselves, so people can realize that they are two different characters and they have two different ways of dealing with things, and they're in two different stories in literally two different eras. So comparing them is kind of ridiculous, so don't get too caught up into it. Also, don't take comparing characters seriously, because they're literally fictional characters. They don't live or breathe like us, so they're just meant to have an entertaining story. If you didn't find Legend of Korra entertaining, then that's fine. You didn't have to. It wasn't for you then. So I hope I provided enough information for people to just understand each of their stories between Aang and Korra, each of their struggles and battles and things that they went through. And like I said, talk about it good or bad, but the debate around Avatar really just helps the series anyway. It just has more people talking about it, and it does become a more fun battle. It's just when people take it too seriously Like, you just need to calm down. I could literally only hope to create a series that has such a loyal fan base as Avatar and Legend of Korra, and create a world that people can literally get lost into for ages. There are, I looked this up, 625 avatars that existed. Imagine all of their stories, all different, and we only saw like maybe 3 in depth. I mean, we saw Aang, we saw Korra's, and we saw the first Avatar, Wan, and we didn't really get a full in-depth thing with him. We got like a 3-episode like short story of his story. So imagine all that, and we might get a animated series for Avatar Kyoshi, but if not, we have the books for her. There's so much. Like, there's so much. So I know that was a lot. This is finally the end of the video. Let me know what you decided in the comments. Who do you like better? I don't want anyone to get into an entire feud, so be nice to one another, and just talk about who do you like more, who do you like less, do you like them both, what are your issues with ATLA, or your issues with LOK, or do you love them both equally? Let me know and let's talk about it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!